Welcome back to Just Quit, the podcast that puts a bat in your back to quit your day job. I'm your host, Darius Ricks, and joining us today is Mr. Richard Guzman, a good friend of mine who I'm getting to know better and better every time we meet. Richard, if you don't mind just telling the audience really quickly what it is that you do and why you're here today.
Well, I'm an attorney in Florida, D.C., and New York, the jurisdictions I'm licensed in. I'm Dade County lifer, representative. I practice mostly in the area of civil law, insurance litigation, personal injury litigation. I do some small business consulting as well. What I mean by that is helping small businesses with contracts and the legal aspects of business, making sure their insurance is set up right, that kind of stuff. And also advising, this is more of a passion project, but advising artists on a pro bono basis.
Nice. You got to give back. You can't make all the money.
Yeah.
So you touched on it a little bit. So how long have you been running your own practice?
Running my own practice since 2020. So literally January of 2020, I kind of struck out on my own. And in March of 2020, the world shut down.
Right.
So that was a big curveball that I had to deal with in that respect. But fortunately enough for me, I had kind of lined myself up where I was getting someone else's cases. What I mean by that is an older attorney who didn't want to handle litigation, and I basically worked his cases for him. And so I was able to continue to eat while that was happening, at the same time finding my footing on how to actually grow a law firm, because I came to learn quickly that running a business is different from being a lawyer. Okay. And I've had some growing pains and I've had to learn the hard way, but thankfully, knock on wood, I haven't gone under just yet.
Okay, so you said a lot really quickly, so let's go back a little bit.
Sure.
So you made the decision in January 2020 to go out on your own. At what point did you realize, and what did that look like for you? Like, yeah, I can do this for myself, and I want to do this for myself.
So I made the decision a little bit before January 2020. January 2020 is when I started.
Right.
So maybe like halfway through 2019, I want to say that I had worked for enough other law firms to realize and to learn enough about how to maximize case value and how to manage a case and get it across the finish line, and realize that I was getting paid only, small potatoes compared to sometimes the money that I was actually generating for the firms. And, I'm not saying that in any way to denigrate or to, downplay what those firms did for me, because, they let me eat.
It is what it is. You know how to do math. 2 + 2 is 4.
Exactly. And, that's the nature of business also, right? They got to pay you a little less than what you're making for them. Otherwise, there is no profit. And that's just the nature of business. I understand that completely. But I was like, well, I think I'm capable enough, intelligent enough, and enterprising enough that maybe I can try to do this on my own and start to build a practice on my own, taking all of the experience and knowledge and all the things that I had already learned from other people and putting it to use for myself. And so that's more or less the time that I had decided to do it. And then I just had to really, get help, basically. Fortunately enough for me, I had enough people in my back, or that had my back, I should say, that I could do it and not worry about, paying rent and that kind of thing.
Got you. So if your support system was big enough, right, what was it that you may have not dragged your feet on, but what was it that did give you some pause or some hesitation before you actually made that decision? Because
you're rolling the dice, really. You know what I'm saying? Like, instead of having a consistent paycheck, right? Now you're going out into like the wilderness and a lot of what people say, you got to eat what you kill nowadays, right? And so I had never done that before. My entire life. Like, I started working when I was 15, 16 was my first job. And I've been working for somebody until however old I was in 2020, 30.
You forgot already?
30 something, whatever. 30. I'm 38 this year, so 32, right?
Gotcha.
It was a totally new experience for me. There are some people who are serial entrepreneurs and, have been doing business one way or another, their whole lives. That wasn't me, though.
So just to piggyback on that, I would like to say, and then and I bring this up a lot when I talk to people and when I do speaking engagements, like one of the biggest things that kind of slowed me down, or I had to realize just looking back from where I am today, I was always on this path, but I let society, for lack of a better term, course correct me.
Right.
Got to go to school, got to get a job, got to work for somebody, got to be safe.
Sure.
But I was one of those people that was a serial entrepreneur. Like one of my first jobs that I can remember, I was cutting my neighbor's grass when I was 11, 12 years old.
Right.
I was taking that $30, $40, stacking it up. I'm buying Xbox games. I'm buying an Xbox. I'm buying J's. Like, that's what I did. And I always did that. So I went from cutting grass to selling candy to doing all of that. But then I got to college. It was like, all right, be an accountant.
Conform.
Yeah. So
Right.
it was just like, I've always had that itch in me, and I had people in my life, like my godfather, he's an entrepreneur, been running his own business for about 30 years now.
Right.
I always had it in me to be an entrepreneur. But for you, like you said, you've always been working, the very Caribbean thing of you to do, since about 12 years old. When did you get that light bulb, that aha for you, like, oh, I can do this by myself?
Like I said, it was probably like around 2019.
Like, was it a specific case or?
No, I think just in general, just handling the amount of cases that I was handling and seeing, I could probably do this with a small team. The hard part is getting the cases, right? And so I had to learn how to do that part, right? How to network more effectively, put myself out there more effectively, find the ways to use the tools that are at our disposal today. For example, search engine optimization, social media marketing, all of these things that I had really no idea anything about because, like I said, I was not entrepreneurial prior to that time. I had always kind of been just following the steps that, they kind of teach you, right? Go to school, work hard, yada, yada, you'll be rewarded handsomely for that. And to be fair, I did, I made good money, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I didn't have autonomy. I have personally a very specific outlook and, for lack of a better term, moral compass. Right, I like to do things a certain way. I like to run things a certain way, and so long as I'm working for someone else, I can't really tell that person, we should do these things this way because I don't have any control. I don't have any ownership, right? Whereas if I'm doing it on my own, I can choose to do pro bono work for an up and coming artist or whatever. You know what I mean? And I don't have to ask for permission. You know what I mean? So those are the things that really started to switch in my mind for me to say, well, I can do this. I'm capable enough. I think I'm, at risk of sounding arrogant, intelligent enough to do this. So why shouldn't I at least try? In the worst case scenario, I fail, but I still have a law degree. I'm still a licensed attorney. So long as I don't do anything illegal, you know what I'm saying? That's never going to change. I would hate myself if I didn't try it. Is basically what it came down to. So that's really what made me change my mind, I guess, about the whole thing.
Got you. So, and based on the timeline you're talking about, it was pretty much a 6-month kind of ramp up from when you made the decision or you felt comfortable to when you actually took that leap, right? What was your process like getting ready to do that? Was it just reading? Was it more networking events? Was it incubator courses on small business? How did you prepare yourself mentally to get up to speed?
Well, first, I'm going to keep it 100%. I was able to secure basically a small business loan from my father-in-law at the time. So that was the number one thing. So really was working myself up to ask him to loan me the money, right? Okay. So that I could support myself and build it up. Thankfully, I was able to pay all that back with interest. Just paid it all back last year. So shout out to that. Shout out to Anibal, who is resting in peace now. So shout out to the big homie for helping me out. And I had that support to let me feel okay. And like I said, I had other contacts that I knew that were going to be feeding me cases to keep me going. And then eventually I started to research ways to network and, do all of those things. So it was a little bit of everything, mm-hmm. And letting people know that I was going to strike out on my own and that, I was ready, willing, and able to help them and to be their legal counsel when and if they needed it.
Gotcha. So one thing that people don't mention, or it doesn't get talked about enough, when you make that transition out into the wilderness, out on your own, once you step from underneath that umbrella and let go of that safety net, everything goes from black and white and in straight lines to just like a swirl of chaos, right? It just instantly. What are some of the things that you do just on a day-to-day basis to just keep you level?
I'm a big proponent and fan of meditation. Every day, I mean, I can't say I do it every single day. Mm-hmm. I try to do it every single day. And 10 minutes just to sit in silence and to be still. Because the legal profession in and of itself is not necessarily chaotic, but it's high stress. No matter what it is you're doing, because to you it may be a run-of-the-mill rudimentary thing. For a client of yours, it may be their whole life. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And for me, I'm doing it every single day. For them, this is something that they never do, and they're putting that stress on you. Mm-hmm. And so you have to deal with everybody else's stress apart from dealing with the own stresses of just being a human being in life. And I find that meditation helps me a lot in just centering myself and allowing me to be a human being and not a lawyer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know? And then also another thing that I don't want to say live and die by, but definitely something that I'm a proponent of is journaling. But that's more recent. And to be fair, I came to these realizations through a variety of things, through therapy, through journeys with indigenous medicines, we'll call it. But they really opened my third eye, my mind to other things, you know what I mean? And like I said, journaling just helps me put whatever stresses are in my mind onto a piece of paper. And that simple act makes it feel like it's no longer in me. Now I've released it, it's gone, you know what I'm saying? It's now into the ether, and I don't have to worry about it, right? And then meditation is a way to like just find stillness and center myself and just be.
Okay, so we're going to go down this rabbit hole for a little bit, right? So for me, that's one of the things I like to mention when I speak to people that caught me by surprise when I started this journey. I didn't know how much of a spiritual process this was going to be. Yeah. Like, I believed and I had faith, but like I said, once you step from that realm of safety, it all changes. The way your self-talk, the way you believe in yourself, the way you see other people see you and how other people look at you, it all changes like at the drop of a dime, right? So that was one of the things that I really had to strengthen my mind, my willpower, just to make it through, right? And you bringing that up, how did your relationship with the with the faith and understanding who you were, how did that change before and during like the first years of the trip?
To be fair and completely honest, I wouldn't necessarily consider myself a very strong believer, quote unquote, right? I'm not a religious person. I might have been in the past, but I don't consider myself a religious person. I'm definitely more of an agnostic person. Regardless, I do think, though, that there is something about going within yourself and having a kind of peace and faith in who you are and the decisions you've made, and recognizing that if you've done the steps beforehand and you were confident enough to make the decision because of these steps that you took to get here, remember that, recognize that.
Right.
And sure, the negative self-talk is going to happen because I have a huge problem with that. I'd be all the time just, negative, denigrating myself sometimes, right? Because like, oh, I haven't done this much, and and there are people doing more, and but in reality, I think that's just, at least in my experience, me believing that other people are saying that about me, when in reality, people probably don't think about me, period,
Right.
And I have to recognize that my negative self-talk is probably me just projecting my own insecurities onto myself. And the meditation, the journaling helps me kind of remember that, right? Like, this is just you hating on yourself. Don't hate on yourself.
Right. You got enough people doing that already.
Right. And maybe not even.
No. I actually had this conversation a couple days ago, and it annoys me how true it is. But the saying, as corny as it is as well, you ain't popping unless you got haters.
Yeah.
They come out of the woodworks. Once you start doing things that work, it's just negativity just flows, right? But that's neither here nor there. So we're going to go transition from the faith, understanding, and belief in yourself and transition all that clarity back to the business, right? So how do you take this level of focus and this linear view on, okay, I know what I need to do and what I should do. How do you actually apply that? Because it's two different things. It's two different, I want to say, parts of the brain, like organizing and understanding what you should do, but then also pushing yourself to do it. Like, how do you think and get this clarity, but then put it into place? Like, what did you do, or how did you learn how to get out of your own way, which is, I think, a lot of entrepreneurs' problem, getting out of your own way and implementing the plan that you actually put together?
Well, that's probably my problem right now, and we were talking a little bit about this before the camera started rolling. Especially as a lawyer, I think, you're responsible for people's problems, and you have not just a business to run, but you also have like ethical and legal considerations to take into account, right? Like, I can't just delegate every little thing. Because at the end of the day, it's my license on the line. Without that license, I can't own a law firm. And so for me at least, the hard part is being confident enough to delegate stuff to other people. And, I started doing that, to be fair, very recently. I hung out my shingle and I was just like a one-man show for a while. I realized that this is never going to get me anywhere, right? Like, this is just, I'm going to make enough money to maintain my lifestyle, but I'm not going to be able to grow. Mm-hmm. And so that's been the hardest part for me, is implementing the plan, for lack of a better term, and recognizing that I don't have to do everything. I don't have to pick up every phone call. I don't have to respond to every email. I can hire people to do those things on my behalf. When the stuff gets a little bit more complicated or requires my specific attention, then I can be the person to do that, so that I can focus more time on the actual legal work and drumming up business, right? Because people want to know you, right? If you're the lawyer that's going to be representing them, they want to know you, and so you have to go out and do the stuff, right? You have to shake the hands, you have to be out there, you have to show your face, so that even if people are going to be recommending you, they can say, well, I know this guy, he's a solid dude, you can trust him. But you got to be out there for that. And if you're always doing, every little thing, you're never going to be out there. So, that's been the hardest part for me.
Gotcha. Putting my consulting hat on for a second.
Go right ahead, man. Free consulting.
Definitely, if you aren't, and even if you are, leverage AI. If you're doing it already, leverage it more.
Right.
Because even when, like you said, there's going to be times where you're going to say stuff's going to come back on your lap because you say it gets too complex. Just plug that into the chat, let it spit it back out to you. It'll save you 4, 5, 6 hours. Now you only really got to do an hour worth of work instead of a whole night. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So it's definitely gotten a lot better from probably the last time you tried to use it. Like, if you tried to use it 6 months ago and what it is now, night and day. So like, I use it myself. I got a contract in December, and I used chat to help me become a marketing expert and do a marketing rollout plan for physical pop-up events. I became a marketing expert overnight.
Right.
So
listen, and I have used AI, and it's definitely been helpful, even for like the minutia of the day, right? Like responding to emails, or, helping you draft a letter so that you don't have to think about every single word. And I go back and I, mold it to myself.
It goes deeper than that.
Right. Yeah. And that's the part that I haven't, even touched on yet, but, it's definitely something that I've been considering.
Try some of those native medicines. It'll open your mind.
Listen, man, my mind was open, dog.
All right. So you probably, I feel like you touched it on a little bit, but I definitely want to hear a very direct answer on it. When you do hit setbacks, because your career is the one where it's not a if you lose, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to take losses.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's going to be multiple losses in a row. What do you do to kind of course correct and make sure you get back on the right path and get back on the winning side, so you're not kind of dwelling in what has happened already?
Well, like you said, losing is part of the game. Especially if you're a litigator and you go into a trial and stuff like that, you're going to lose sometimes. That's the nature of the beast. I like to, for all of his faults, Theodore Roosevelt has a quote that I like. It's about the man in the arena. You just got to be in the fight, man. You just got to stay in the fight. I like to remember that. People are going to hate on the dude in the fight, but he's the one in the fight. Y'all can hate all y'all want. He's the one trying. He may win, he may lose, but he's there. Yeah. I try to remind myself of that. I'm going to win, I'm going to lose. That's just the nature of the game. And to be honest, this is something that I've done also a lot more recently, is recognize the importance of rest, of taking a vacation sometimes, man, of just like unplugging sometimes, of just not doing anything, right? And sometimes it really, especially after a loss or, a more stressful situation, I think disconnecting can help you just realign your thought process, right? And not necessarily dwell on it in that moment, because I think your vision in that particular moment may be skewed by your emotions, right? Because if you lose, at least me, I'm a highly competitive person. If I lose, I feel horrible. Like when my teams lose, I hate it. The Hurricanes just lost the national championship game.
Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, huh?
I was messed up for a couple of days, I'm looking at a book about the Miami Heat. When the Heat lose, I'm in a bad mood. But then I recognize disconnect for a day or two, and I'm like, life is bigger than this, and it's just the nature of the game, man. You just got to keep going. And once you've had that little bit of time to separate from the actual loss, you can see it, I think, more clearly, more dispassionately, more objectively, and then analyze, okay, this is what I did wrong. That's what I did wrong. Don't do this next time. I can approach it this way next time. And like I said, you have, at least for me, I have less of an emotional attachment to the loss. I see it more objectively, and I think that I can use it more effectively with some distance from it, as opposed to just trying to analyze it in the moment, if that makes sense.
Okay. I want to take a step back. I don't know if we mentioned it earlier in the interview or right before we got on, but you mentioned that you're in the process of scaling the firm,
right,
getting influx of capital. You're going to be building out your team. I wanted to know, what are you doing to help prepare you to be a better leader? Because I think a leader can be made and not born. And I think it's just a series of repetition, just putting those shots up in the gym. So what are you doing, or what have you done to help prepare you to go from leading one virtual assistant to probably 4 virtual assistants and 3 clerks in the office? Like, What are you doing to get ready for that?
Well, I'm doing a lot more reading. I don't really read a lot of self-help books, but I will read a lot of books written by leaders, if that makes sense, autobiographies, things like this, to see how they approach not just the idea of leadership, but life, right? And trying to learn from them as much as I can by reading their thoughts. Because again, a lot of times I'm reading autobiographies and stuff like that.
What's one that just sticks out to you right now? Just putting you on the spot.
Okay. Well, what sticks out to me right now specifically is Angela Davis. I'm reading her autobiography. Okay. Right, and this may be contradictory, obviously based on her politics, but her stick-to-itiveness. Right. This is a woman who was imprisoned falsely when she was young, 27, 28, or whatever, for a crime she didn't commit. But through it all, she stayed committed to her goal, right? And sure, her goal is different from mine in this particular instance, right? Because my goal is to scale and grow a business. But her commitment through all manner of adversity and obstacles to the goal, to do whatever it is that was necessary to accomplish the goal, made her an icon, right? For her willingness to be jailed, for example. I don't have anything near that kind of risk at play for what I'm doing. And if I am able to be as committed to what I'm trying to do as she was to that, then I think I'm a big believer in osmosis, right? Like, people will kind of learn from what you're doing more than what you're telling them.
Yeah.
And if they see me doing the stuff as much as I would like to do it, they're going to take those cues from my actions as opposed to what I tell them to do. You know, I think people fall behind whoever the leader is and do what that person does. So to go back to the Miami Heat, and I guess another book, Pat Riley's book, The Mind of a Champion, or The Way of a Champion. I can't remember the name of the book right now, but Pat Riley's book. The Miami Heat, I think objectively, are probably, if not the best, second best organization in the NBA, and probably one of the better organizations in American sports.
I just want to take a moment. This is not propaganda for Heat culture. Just want to put that out there.
But it is propaganda for Heat culture. And I really believe in Heat culture because the guy at the top is Pat Riley. People will say whatever they want about him, but his dedication to professionalism in every aspect. We're going to be the hardest working, best trained, best coached, best whatever team. It comes, and everybody falls in line behind that because they see him doing the work.
Right.
And they recognize that if they don't follow up on the work that he's doing, that he's trying to implement, that they're going to get pushed out, you know? So that's also part of it, right? Like, right. You know, I think I have a tendency, and I think I maybe have a reputation for being no nonsense, you know? I know I'm smiling a lot here, but when it comes down to business, I'm really, you know, very locked in hardcore, you know, because of that. Because I do think that it does get you results, you know? Like, if we are about our business, we can win, and if we win, then we can celebrate, right? Because, like I said, I take losing very hard, and losing feels worse than winning feels good.
So it's about results. If you want to put one thing out there that an aspiring entrepreneur, someone that's 6 months out, 12 months out from making that leap or preparing to make that decision that's going to change the rest of their life, what's one thing that they can do that you did or you wish someone had told you to do that could have prepared you when you were 6 months out to make that leap?
I would say talk to more business consultants. Try to put some money away and pay somebody who builds businesses for a living, and ask them and pay them for their service so you can get the right kind of advice about what are the things you need to do for sure to make sure that first year is going to be as successful as possible. Because looking back on it, I wish I would have done something like that, right? Just ask somebody, because I think, to be fair, and maybe I was arrogant, I probably was arrogant with it, I was like, this is going to be a piece of cake, you know? I'm going to do this, people like me, you know, I'm going to get business. But that's not how it works,
right?
You know? So talk to somebody who builds businesses, you know, talk to somebody who's maybe built a business or two, talk to somebody who's already, you know, built a law firm if you're going to be a lawyer or an accounting firm or whatever, and ask them, you know, where they messed up. I think people say, right, the best teacher is experience. Really, the best teacher is somebody else's experiences, and let them teach you where they messed up so that you don't make the mistakes that they made, and so that you can start off maybe on a little bit more advanced than they were.
Sounds good to me. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the time.
Well, it's been my pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
All right. This is another episode of Just Quit. Thanks, everybody.